Hello, and good morning, or at night, whenever you're watching this. My name is Zack DeCicco, and you're listening to the Zack DeCicco podcast. Today's episode will be about students on the autism spectrum and dealing with college. Later on in the episode, you'll be hearing from Tyler Smith, a coordinator with the DRC here on the UNL campus. The main reason why I decided to do this podcast episode on the topic of autism spectrum students in college is because I thought it was a unique and different angle to take. I figured most people were going to do an episode on mental health, parking, tuition, etc. This provides an opportunity to teach others about a different aspect of college that most students don't realize. As a student on the autism spectrum myself, a lot of the elements discussed in the article are things I can relate to. As we go through the podcast episode, I'll be sharing some of my own personal experiences with autism. The article I chose to talk about is Identifying the Unmet Needs of College Students on the Autism Spectrum, written by Stephanie Pindle. This article was written back in March 2014, so keep in mind the numbers and what they're talking about is probably very different in 2023. There's a lot of data collected for the article that talks about how many autistic kids are going into college. One interesting piece of data shows that more and more kids with autism are going into college. In the year 2000, only 1 in 150 autistic kids were going to college. By 2008, it was 1 in 88 kids. The article also explains how some of the problems autistic kids struggle with and how that ties into college. They say how the transitional period from high school to college is a very stressful time. They particularly struggle with the communication aspect, meeting new people in their large classes with few opportunities for one-on-one time with the professor. Because of all these setbacks, mental health, transition, and overall adjustment is a factor coming out of this. Back before autism was a well-known thing, kids with it struggled because they didn't have the right tools or help necessary. Now there's a lot of help up front with services and programs being offered to help students. As more and more kids on the autism spectrum are diagnosed, the more help and resources these kids are being provided to make sure their college experiences are as good as possible. I've been very pleased with the amount of resources and help I have on the campus. Tyler has been a great resource at the DRC, and so has everybody else there. Whenever I have a question or concern, they know how to help me and give me the answer I need. Some of the accommodations that I have for the DRC is that I can get extended time on tests. I can get time of a half that comes in handy to make sure I have plenty of time to take the test and not feeling overwhelmed or rushed. The other thing I have the option is to take my test in the DRC. I think this is super helpful as it allows me to take my tests in a different, quieter environment without feeling the stress of being in class taking it. I've only been at UNL for a couple of months, but so far I've been very impressed with the DRC. I can't speak for all of the colleges out there, but I know that autism spectrum students have a lot of resources to help guide you through college here on campus. The DRC is there to help us. It's not there to watch over us 24/7, but it's there if we need it. I would encourage all students on the spectrum to use it and take advantage of it. The next segment of the podcast is where my guest joins the fun. Tyler Smith from the DRC. I asked him 5 questions related to the topic. Here's what he had to say. What have been some of the biggest challenges you've seen kids with autism face in college?
Well, that's a great question. Oftentimes it's going to be social interaction skills. Most students on the spectrum will have an interest area that they find in college, and oftentimes that's an academic interest area. So they're really focused on that. Unfortunately, what happens is the social aspect of being a college student can sometimes get a little bit neglected. So oftentimes I'll see a lot of students that are on the spectrum be really honed in on their academics and maybe not partake in a lot of the social gatherings or social events that many other students that are coming into college will participate in.
Okay, thank you. What do you think is the biggest strength that kids with autism have that kids without autism don't have?
I think a lot of students with autism are outstanding students. Like I talked about before, with having an area of interest, oftentimes what we'll see is students on the spectrum, they really are focused in that area of interest, and they really enjoy it, and they delve into it with everything that they have, and they really love it. And not to say that autism students don't have that, but I tend to see it more with students that are on the spectrum.
Yeah. What have been some of the biggest accomplishments your former students have like done and achieved?
So I actually have a student of mine who I used to have in high school when I was a high school teacher. He was a student of mine, and very shy and very reserved. But when he got to college, something changed, and he decided he was going to more or less come out of his shell and go down this really scary journey of becoming social and trying to meet new people and experience new things. A student that has a lot of sound and light sensitivities, a student that has sensitivities around being around a lot of people, was finding himself at the football games, finding himself at the basketball games, and really coming into his own and being part of a community, which I thought was just outstanding. I thought it was really cool to see a student that recognized, hey, this is something that I struggle with, and really pushed himself to break down these barriers and go to these events and be part of the community and make friends. And that's a great thing that many students get to experience when they come to college.
Yeah, very cool. Why do you think some people might not value the success of people on the autism spectrum? Why do you think people might look down on people on the autism spectrum?
I think this goes for just about anybody. When we see somebody that is talented, sometimes we feel threatened by them. And when we look at academics, if I'm sitting in a class with another student and that student may have some other challenges in their life, and they're really successful in the subject area that I feel I'm really successful at as well, oftentimes we'll feel threatened by it. And I think that's where it comes from.
Yeah. What have been some of the biggest takeaway moments that you've seen with your students that have autism?
Students are always surprising me. And I think the biggest thing that I've seen as far as a takeaway is students that have come out of high school with IEPs and 504s and parents that have really kind of led the charge for them. The coolest thing I've seen is those students take accountability for their own actions and move forward. I'll give you an example. Students will come in with specific accommodations, and then they'll say, you know what, I can do this for myself. I don't need this anymore. And to see a student kind of come into their own and work through coping mechanisms that maybe they've learned in the past, become an advocate for themselves, reach out and talk to people, things that maybe they haven't had to do in the past, they do it now. It's just this period of growth that I see with a lot of students. It just amazes me. It makes me love my job and makes me want to keep doing this for a long time.
Alrighty. Thank you so much. I love the answers Tyler gave to my questions. One of the reasons why I decided to have this be my topic of the podcast episode is because I think it's a good thing for people to know. I heard online where there's been multiple times where parents have been told, well, good luck or change your plans, you're doomed, all because their kid has autism. That's unfair and a very rude thing to say if you ask me. But the truth is, autistic kids don't go through college alone. Will they face challenges in college? Sure. But doesn't everybody? There's a lot of resources at the UNR campus that help autism spectrum kids go through college. Autistic kids can accomplish so much in life. Autism isn't a barrier in life. It's an asset that can help people out very well. Thank you so much for listening to my podcast. I hope you've enjoyed this discussion about some of the struggles kids with autism face in college. As far as my point of view on the article, I think it's a very interesting article that tells you about that tells us a lot about autistic kids and how the different setbacks that come with it tied to the struggles of the college experiences, I would like to thank Tyler Smith from the DRC for guest starring on the podcast and answering my questions. Thank you for listening, and I will see you next time.